Hello, my name is Michael Hunn. I'm the Bishop of the Diocese of the Rio Grande, and I want to let you know about a special Advent treat this year. This year especially, we all need a Savior, and so as we await for the coming of the Christ child, please join me and my daughter in listening to Advent Storytime, brought to us by the Reverend Jan Hosea, the interim rector at St. Andrew's Episcopal Church in Las Cruces, New Mexico. Every Sunday, in Advent and Christmastide, Mother Jan is going to be bringing us stories to prepare our hearts for the coming of the Christ child and the birth of the King of Kings. Thank you, Mother Jan, and let us keep the faith together.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Storytime. I'm Mother Jan Hosea from St. Andrew's Episcopal Church in Las Cruces, New Mexico, and I'm here this evening to bring you not one, but two stories this evening. The first story is called Why Christmas Trees Aren't Perfect. That sounds interesting, doesn't it? Let's take a look. They say that if you creep into an evergreen forest late at night, you can hear the trees talking. Do you know what an evergreen is? An evergreen is a tree like a pine tree that never changes from being green all year round. It doesn't drop its leaves like an elm or a maple tree does. It's always green, therefore it's called evergreen. So this says that if evergreen forest late at night, you can hear the trees talking. If you listen very carefully to the whisper of the wind, you can hear the older pines telling the younger ones why they will never be perfect. They will always have a bent branch here and a gap there. But long ago, all evergreens were perfect. Each one took special pride in its branches that sloped smoothly down from the pointed top so evenly to a shaped skirt. This was especially true in a small kingdom far beyond the Carpathian Mountains in Europe. Here, evergreen trees were the most beautiful of all, for here the sun shone just right, not too hot, not too dim. Here, the rain fell just enough to keep the ground moist and soft, so no tree went thirsty. And here, the snow fell gently day after day to keep every branch fresh and green. Here's what that valley looked like. Looks like a big castle up here on top, doesn't it? But see, here's all the evergreens up and down the slopes. Each year, as Christmas approached, the Queen's woodsman would search the royal evergreen forest for the most perfect, the most beautiful tree. The one fortunate enough to be chosen would be cut on the first Saturday of Advent. Then it would be carefully carried into the castle and set up in the center of the Great Hall. There it reigned in honor for all the Christmas celebrations. Out in the hushed forest, every evergreen hoped for this honor. Each tree tried to grow its branches and its needles to perfection. All of them strained to have the best form and the greatest appearance. Here's the guys that went out and looked very carefully at all the trees to find the most perfect tree. They're being very pensive, very thoughtful, aren't they? One tree, small pine, grew near the edge of the forest and promised to be the most beautiful of all. As a seedling, it had listened carefully to what the older trees who knew what was best for young saplings had to say. And it had tried so very hard to grow just right. As a result, everything about small pine, from its deep sea green color to the curling tip of its evenly spaced branches, was perfect. It had, in fact, already overheard jealous whispers from the other trees. But it paid them no mind. Small Pine knew that if one did not do one's very best, what anyone else said didn't matter. Well, here's a picture of Small Pine. He looks pretty perfect, doesn't he, right there in the middle of the forest. One cold night, when a bright full moon glittered on the crusty snow, a little gray rabbit came hopping as fast as he could to the grove of evergreens. The rabbit's furry sides heaved in panic. From beyond the hill came the howling of wild dogs in the thrill of the hunt. The bunny, his eyes wide with fright, frantically searched for cover. But the dark, cold trees lifted their branches artfully from the snow and frowned. They did not like this interruption of their quiet evening when growing was at its best. Faster and faster the rabbits circled as the excited, howling dogs sounded louder and louder. Oh, there's the bunny running. See him? All we see is his backside. He's running pretty fast, isn't he? And then Small Pine's heart shuddered. When the terrified rabbit ran near, Small Pine dipped its lower branches down, down, down into the snow. And in that instant, before the wild dogs broke into the grove, the rabbit slipped under Small Pine's evergreen shade. He huddled safely among the comforting branches while the dogs galloped by and disappeared into the forest. There's Small Pine, and I don't see a bunny anywhere, do you? In the morning, the rabbit went home to its burrow, and Small Pine tried to lift its lower branches back up to their proper height. It strained and struggled, but the branches had been pressed down too long through the night. Oh well, Small Pine thought, no matter. Perhaps the woodsman wouldn't notice a few uneven branches near the ground in a tree so beautiful. See, there's Small Pine standing in the forest with its branches heavy with snow. Wish we got that kind of snow around here just once in a while, don't you? Several days later, a terrible blizzard lashed into the land. No one remembered ever having so much wind and snow. Villagers slammed their shutters tight, while birds and animals huddled in their nests and dens. A brown mother wren had become lost in the storm. With feathers so wet she could barely fly, she went from one large evergreen to another looking for a shelter. But each tree she approached feared the wren would ruin its perfect shape and clenched its branches tight like a fist. Finally, the exhausted wren fluttered towards Small Pine. Once more, Small Pine's heart opened, and so did its branches. The mother wren nestled on a branch near the top, secure at last. But when the storm ended and the bird had flown away, Small Pine could not move its top branches back into their perfect shape. In them would be a gap forevermore. See, there's the wren hiding in the branches of the tree. It's just a little bird. Days passed and winter deepened. The packed snow had frozen so hard that the deer in the forest could not reach the tender ground moss, which they ate to survive. Only the older, stronger deer could dig through the icy snow with their hooves. One little fawn had wandered away from its mother, and now he was starving. He inched into the pine grove and noticed the soft, tender evergreen tips. He tried to nibble on some of them, but every tree very quickly withdrew its needles, so the tiny deer teeth couldn't chew them. Thin and weak, he staggered against, who do you guess? Small Pine. Pity filled the tree's little heart, and it stretched out its soft needles for the starving fawn to eat. But alas, when the deer was strong enough to scamper away, Small Pine's branches looked very ragged. There's the deer eating on the small branches of Small Pine. Small Pine wilted in sorrow. It could hear what the larger, still perfect trees were saying about how bad it looked. A tear of pine gum oozed from the tip of a branch. Small Pine knew it could never hope for the honor of being the Queen's Christmas tree. Lost in despair, Small Pine did not see the good Queen come with the woodsman into the forest. It was the first Saturday of Advent, and she had come to choose the finest tree herself, because this was a special celebration, a year in the history of her kingdom. Oh, look at the sleigh carrying the Queen. As the royal sleigh, drawn by 2 white horses, slowly passed through the forest, her careful eyes scanned over the evergreens. Each one was hoping for the royal choice. When the Queen saw Small Pine, a flush of anger filled her. How could such an ugly tree with so many drooping branches and gaps be allowed in a royal forest? She decided to have the woodsman cut it to throw it away, and nodded for the sleigh to drive on. That's too bad. But then she raised up her hand for the sleigh to stop, and glanced back at the forlorn little pine. She noticed the tracks of small animals under its uneven needles. She saw a wren's feather caught in its branches. And as she studied the gaping hole in its side and its ragged shape, understanding filled her heart. "This is the one," she said, and pointed to Small Pine. The woodsman gasped, but they did as the Queen directed. To the astonishment of all the evergreens in the forest, Small Pine was carried away to the great hall of the castle. There it was decorated with shimmering silver stars, gold angels which sparkled and flashed in the light of thousands of glowing candles. On Christmas Day, a huge Yule log blazed in the fireplace at the end of the great hall. While orange flames clucked and cracked, the Queen's family and all the villagers danced and sang together around Small Pine. And everyone who danced and sang around it said that Small Pine was the finest Christmas tree yet. For in looking at its drooping, nibbled branches, they saw the protecting arm of their father or the comforting lap of their mother. And some, like the wise Queen, saw the love of Christ expressed on the earth. There's Small Pine all decorated. So, if you walk among evergreens today, you will find, along with rabbits and birds and other happy living things, many trees like Small Pine. You will see a drooping limb which gives cover, a gap offering a warm resting place, or branches ragged from feeding hungry animals. For as many of us, the trees have learned that living for the sake of others makes us the most beautiful in the eyes of God. That's pretty true, isn't it? When we live for others and give to others, we are recognized in the eyes of God, and the other people get help. What a great little story. Why Christmas trees aren't perfect. Yay! The second book I have for you today is God Gave Us Christmas, and it's about polar bears. Let's see what it has to say. Mama, little cub asked one night, who invented Christmas? Was it Santa? No, Mama Bear said, God invented Christmas. God gave us Christmas. Is Christmas more important than Santa? Oh, yes, much more important, Mama said with a smile. Mama and Baby Bear were baking cookies. They were having a good conversation. I bet when you bake cookies with a parent or a significant adult, you kind of ask them questions too, don't you? The next morning, little cub sleepily climbed into Mama's lap. Can we go find Santa, Mama? He lives around here someplace, I think. Santa is hard to find, said Mama, but we can go find God everywhere. There's little bear asking Mama a question. Yahoo! Cried little cub. I didn't know we could find God. Oh, yes, Mama said, we can always find God. Little cub looked over her shoulder and whispered, can we leave them at home? Yes, Papa will watch the little ones. You and I can go alone. Little cub was very happy at that. Will we go to find God? I will see how he gave us Christmas. Yes, little cub, you shall see how God gave us Christmas. There's little cub and Mama working on some other things in the house. The next morning, little cub and Mama filled their packs, kissed their family goodbye, and set off to find God and see how he gave them Christmas. They walked to the top of a mountain. There they are, walking to the top of the mountain. And down the next slide. They slid down, didn't they? And up another mountain where they set up camp. Little cub was so tired that she went right to sleep. But Mama nudged her while it was still dark. Mama, why are you waking me up? Because it's God, little cub. Come and see. What is that? Little cub asked in wonder as she watched the dancing lights in the sky. See the dancing lights in the sky? Have you ever seen that? That's God at work, little cub. He sent his only son as a baby so that we would know light from dark. Jesus is the light of the world. Jesus is how God gave us Christmas. The next day, they arrived at a huge lake. All at once, with a mighty roar, a chunk of ice fell away from the cliff and fell into the sea. What is that? Little cub asked, covering her ears and leaning into Mama. That is God, little cub. He is so powerful, he can command the water to freeze and the glacier to melt. He is mightier than any king on earth. And because he is all powerful, he made Jesus King of all kings. See, there's the ice falling off the iceberg. Have you ever seen that? Maybe gone to Alaska to see the icebergs? But Jesus was just a baby. How could he be a king? All kings begin as babies. God knew we would need someone to touch and to see and to smell. Mama paused to sniff little cub's neck, making her giggle to understand just how much he loved each of these. Little snuggle and kiss around the neck. Mama awoke little cub again before the sun came up. She pointed to the east at a star that changed from green to red to green again and shot out its many points. Is that God again? Little cub asked, rubbing her eyes. Yes, Jesus is called the bright morning star. He's always with us. And he first came when God gave us Christmas. See the bright shining star? What about Santa? Little Cub asked. Did God give us Santa? Santa Claus reminds us about many good things, like generosity and care. But it is God and Jesus that we celebrate most come Christmas time. We always want to thank God for giving us Christmas. On the way home, Mama Bear stopped by a tiny flower peeking up from the hard frozen ground. "Oh, you're too early, little flower," she said. "Little Cub, Jesus is like this flower, God in our world, living where you wouldn't expect him, surprising us. Christmas is about a lot of surprises." Like presents? Yes, Jesus is the best present of all, and God would have given us that present, even if it was only for you. Only for me? Only for you, little Cub. God gave you Christmas. There's Mama and little Cub looking at the flower. Mama and little Cub came upon a church, glowing with warm light. Soft voices reached out to them singing. What are they singing, Mama? About the night God first gave us Christmas, when Jesus was born. Tomorrow is Christmas Day. Would Jesus have come for mean old Maggie or the moose or grumpy old Frankie and the fox? Little Cub whispered. Maggie, Frankie, any of us. Jesus is present for everyone, grumpy or happy, mean or kind. God gave us all Christmas. There's the people at the church kneeling around the manger. Little Cub was glad to be back home that night in her cozy bed. Thanks for showing me God, Mama. There isn't anything I'd rather do, sweet child, she said with a kiss. Night-night. Little Cub went to sleep and dreamed of bright stars and northern lights, of a king born as a tiny baby, angels singing over him. There's Mama kissing and Daddy kissing little Cub good night. What sweet dreams. And little Cub woke up to Christmas. Yahoo! She cried. God gave us Christmas again. There she is, looking out her window. That's perfect, isn't it? God truly did give us Christmas, and the best present of all is the present God gave us in Jesus, the babe in the manger that grew up to be the miracle worker and the Savior of the world. Have a wonderful Christmas, my friends. I'll see you the Sunday after Christmas with 1 or 2 more stories. Bye-bye.